Well, welcome everybody to our fifth webinar. I'm so excited you can all be here. I can't believe it's the fifth one. I'm Ann Kursinski, five-time Olympian, coach, author, clinician, and trainer here at my farm, Market Street in Frenchtown, New Jersey. And I'm so excited to again be joined by Cindy McKee, mindset coach, former student, longtime friend, and who's been, this webinar series has just been so exciting to be doing it with you.
Thanks, Anna. It's really been fun. So I'm Cindy McKee. I'm co-owner of Soaring Life Coaching along with my husband, Bob. And I'm a former trainer in the equestrian world. I had my own business right down the road from Ann's in New Jersey some years ago. And I taught and trained and took lessons from Ann myself and had a bunch of students and brought them to Ann on a regular basis. It was awesome. And in the last 10 years, I've turned my attention over to the work of personal development in that field. And spent about 10 years really in deep study with really some of the best thought leaders in the world, studying psychology and physiology and neuroscience. And so now we've developed our own signature Mind Matters program where we bring this to you. And we've been really having a lot of fun sharing some of these concepts during these webinars. It's really been fun for me to co-do this with Ann. So here we are. We're going to be talking, as we've said, we've announced, we're going to be talking about some of these very key concepts that we've used throughout the webinar, and that they've been just so relevant to creating the successful mindset that we all want to have. And today we're going to be talking specifically about relationship and how your relationship with yourself affects your relationship, certainly with your horse, with others, your significant other, your friends and family, your clients, your students, your employees, really everybody that you come in contact with. And how it's really going to talk about how the quality of your relationships really dictates the quality of your life.
Yes, and as we know in the equestrian competitive world, this influences the quality of your performance. It's estimated 80% of your winning performance is influenced by your mindset and how often your brain gets in the way of that performance.
Yeah, I heard, to speak to that, I heard this is many, many years ago after one of the Olympic Games. I heard some of the Olympians saying that 80% of it was their mindset. And I think they called it something different back then, but it was, all happening up here. 10% of it they attributed to athletic ability and 10% luck. So it was really interesting the way they divided that out. So what we're going to talk about today is our relationship, and we really are going to start and kind of hone in on our relationship with ourself. We're going to talk about the hows and whys of how that works and what to do about it.
Yeah, great. And as we go through our training and conversation today, we'd love to hear from you. Put your questions in the chat box if you are on the webinar, or post your questions in the comments on Facebook Live. Let's hear from you guys. What about your relationships? Hopefully we'll be answering questions, as Cindy said, as we go along. But if you guys have something, bring it up.
Yeah, be bold. Because your contribution is probably answering somebody else's question. They might not be willing to step up. They might be a little nervous about doing that. So, I've been doing a lot of reflecting as we've approached this date of having this webinar, and I've really thought about how my relationship with myself over the years, both in the equestrian world and since, has really affected my outcomes, and times that I may have been in reaction mode versus response mode to any given situation, whether it's very personal at home or it's something professionally or it's something with a family member. Oftentimes I found myself not on the right side and jumping over, and we're going to talk about how that works. And Ann, I know, I'm sure you've experienced it too a lot in your business as well.
Absolutely. So often, right, or professional things, as you say, how you say it, but the getting defensive, somebody asks a question or something, right away it's sort of this defending instead of, and I think this talks to that also, how we feel about ourselves and the situation, kind of reaction mode, which isn't always the best thing. And so often later you say, oh, I should have handled this differently. I think with your work, talking about this, figuring that ahead of time, getting a real handle on it. I think all of these webinars have been so great that way, instead of that, oh, I really could have said something differently to that person, or I should have handled the situation differently. I think that that's very important. And for sure, the old, in so many, riding, teaching, all that we do, we wear so many hats in our business, whether you're professional or amateur, whatever. And along with being, as you say, the spouse or the wife, or you have another business and people are riding for fun. But all of that is all relationships, how you deal with all of it. And as you say, first of all, yourself. So much of that, our self-talk, negative, generally it's negative self-talk. And I've had to learn to, again, when you win something or something goes well, to say, oh my God, yeah, that was really great. I personally, for a long time, I would always downplay when there was success. Oh, no, not to make a big deal out of it. On the other hand, I've gotten older. No, take it when you can get it. And you grow, that grows for sure. The not being good enough, that's always been, part of me. And as I had said in a previous webinar, that sort of had that drilled into me when I was really young. I would never be good enough. And working on that constantly. So there's kind of a constant, I think, a dialogue that goes on in a lot of people's heads. And so how to get ahead of that, I think, is so exciting and interesting for you to talk about.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting as we're in this competitive world. So we've raised the stakes already. So we're not just, hermits out on a hill somewhere. We put ourselves in relationship, not only in relationship with our horse, with all the people around us, but now we're putting ourselves into performance mode in front of a lot of other people. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of expectations that go on, a lot of voices that go on up here. And to make, to really elaborate on your point, if you work on this ahead of time, how much, like anything, how much different it will be for you in all areas of your life, and certainly as you go into the performance in the competitive world, for sure. So, let's dive in. I'm hoping many of you were on our webinar before, but we talked about, I'm going to turn my screen over. I've got a very cute horse in the background, but I'm going to turn my screen so you can see that diagram. Even if you can't see it, I'll review it with you. But if you remember that, we call it the 5 primary drivers. And this is what's running the whole show for you. So at the very top, we have beliefs that we're carrying around about ourselves. So I was thinking about this beforehand. If you ask a lot of people, how they feel about themselves, they might say, no, I'm good. I think okay about myself. I work on myself and I think okay about myself. So my first question is, where do you get nervous? That'll pull that out. Where you find yourself in reaction mode, that'll pull that out. Where do you find yourself in judgment of others? That'll pull that out, because if you're in judgment of others, I guarantee you're also in judgment of yourself. Just where are your triggers? Because we all have them. Nobody gets off this free. We've all got them. So we've developed some beliefs about ourselves that are in our subconscious, that are running the show, that we don't even know that are there. But those beliefs are responsible for our thoughts, for our thinking, the thinking that goes on up here, overthinking that goes on. And that thinking creates feelings. And those feelings may not be very good at that time. And the feelings create our actions, and oftentimes they're inactions. I might want to have the hard conversation with somebody and I'm kind of afraid to, or I don't. Or I might want to apply for a job and I'm thinking it might be beyond me. Or I might want to call a famous trainer like Ann, I'm afraid to pick up the phone, just the inactions, whatever they are. Or I want to get some help, and I don't take action to do that. Anyway, those inactions end up giving you some results. And oftentimes they're results that we don't prefer. And those results go right back in and feed our original belief. And we get on this loop and it's running in the background all the time and we don't even know it. So that is really the crux of, what we tell ourselves about ourselves and how it affects our relationships and our performances and the results that we want. And Anne, you were just sharing with me the other day about a student and her self-talk and how it was really to the negative, and you had to kind of talk her off the cliff, and say, no, because if you would let her walk away from that lesson, talking about herself that way, because that's how she's just going to continue to dial it in.
Absolutely. Right? Yeah. A cute young gal and her, asking her when it didn't go so well or she didn't do something. And I said, so tell me what happened? Why did that happen? Or why wasn't that so good? Or how was that? Well, it wasn't so good. And I didn't do it well. And I said, well, why not? And, I'm just slow. And it was kind of cute. But as Cindy's saying, that's this thing. It's probably at least the second or third time I've heard her say that now, because I very often when I teach, I ask them, so what do you think? What do you feel? What are you getting out of this? And, or, why did that happen? And, oh, I'm slow. And, so I know you can, by practicing, by doing these exercises, yes, you can be quicker with your eyes and things. And as you say, talking her off the cliff.
Right. And so in our coaching programs, it's really the very thing that we do, and we've been working on, on the surface level a little bit, through these webinars, just to give everybody a taste of it. But when we can discover what this belief is that's driving that show, and in this particular instance, we'll just use her, she called her slow. That was her. So when Anne's asking her to do an exercise and she wasn't pulling it off, she's accepted the fact that she's slow, and she can't make the exercise happen in the way that Anne wanted to do it. How many times have I either been in a lesson, have my students in a lesson, or watched some of Anne's lessons where she'll take students through an exercise. This happens every year at her clinic. And by the fourth time, the student gets the exercise. And Anne every time says, why didn't you do that the first time? Why did it take 4 times? We don't get 4 times in the ring to make that change. And the answer is because they've got a belief going on that they can't do it. And so Anne in her clinics has to prove to them that they can do it. And that's the whole crux around change. We say we want change, but we don't really want change because we're wired to not like change. Because that's our survival mechanism, in our back brain, our hind brain, our survival-based brain, telling us, don't do the difficult thing. Don't do something that makes you uncomfortable, because that equaled maybe I'm not going to be safe. But that's actually not true anymore, right? That's old patterning taking over. We want change, but change is what? Change is uncomfortable. Like that little girl has to get out of her shell and get quicker. She's telling herself she's slow. She's telling herself she can't do the exercise. As Anne described it to me, the lesson is that when she proved to her that she could do it, but she was telling herself that she couldn't.
Right.
And go ahead. Yeah, take it.
Talking a little bit, like you said, about to prove it to them. Then it just so happened, then I don't always do this. I happened to be on a horse when I was teaching her. So I when she was having her little lesson, so I did the exercise part of it myself with my horse, and so she could really see it. I did it quickly. I did a good turn, or I added another thing she had trouble with was adding strides, and of course I did it first time, no problem. The horse didn't resist. Just of course I'm 10 times your age, or maybe more than that, maybe
more experience.
Anyway, yes, way more experience, and she's young. But again, as soon as she saw it, also to say, oh, I really can't. That is possible to do. Then her brain, whatever it is in her brain, shifted, and she did it, and she did it way more effortlessly. That's what was so interesting. Before she was struggling, and you could tell, and she couldn't do it in her head. Then I demonstrated it to her. And of course, the horse would do whatever she tells it to do. The horse was adorable. But then, boom, she did it. And I said, was that hard? Oh, no. Was her answer. It really wasn't hard. It was so cute.
Yeah.
But her head had been hard somehow.
Right. Sure. She was just in that pattern. She was in that place of this is hard. And that's why we don't do the change that we say we want. It doesn't matter what it is. The formula is the same. You have to take action in the direction of what it is, the picture. But first you have to create this picture of what it is you want. We get all hung up on the how. Yes. Well, we don't know the how because we've never done it. Whatever it is we want to dial into our lives, we can't possibly know the how because it hasn't happened yet for us. So we don't have any wiring yet for it. So we have to create it with a picture, and Anne created the picture for our student. She gave her a visual of that working out. We can give ourselves those visuals too of what it is. We can just imagine it, or the brain thinks in pictures. We can imagine what that is, and then we have to do it, and we have to get out of our comfort zone. It doesn't always feel good. If we're making change, I would ask my students, going back to my students, say, how's that feel? And they'd say, great. And then, well, then you're not doing it. Because it should feel great. It should feel awkward. It should feel awkward, So as you know, I'm taking golf lessons now, and I'm making some changes. Like, oh my gosh, one day I couldn't even hit the ball at all. I wasn't hitting it at all because we made a change, and it's like all of a sudden everything went south. But I knew, because I do this, I knew if I stayed with it, the rest of my body would take over, and I had to just be uncomfortable. with that moment in order to make the changes. And so, along the same lines, Anne gave her a picture, a visual, do this, you can do it. And she believed it and she could do it, which is totally awesome.
It's interesting too that so many, as you say, in a clinic I taught last weekend, and a couple riders with some new exercises, and again pushing them to experience something different, just exactly what you're talking about in the brain by doing exercises they've never done. And but as you say, all these little voices in their head. I mean, I can't really read their minds, but I can pretty much read their mind. I've done it this a long time. That they have that, whatever you call it, all the reasons why they can't do it, because in the past this happened or that happened, or I'll never be able to do it, or I'm too old, or I for whatever, anyway, they can't do it. And again, I stick with it and they eventually do it, and it's fun and it's rewarding and everything. But all the little voices of all the, as you say, we haven't done it, so you don't know exactly yet what it feels like. And yet you watch other good ones do the exercise or show at the horse show, but they have all these negative beliefs that are just babbling away for years and years and years.
Right.
So how to change that?
Exactly. They're so dialed in. And what happens is we get into, we call it being in your own lane. We call this in relationships we work with specifically on partners, that we tend to get in and this happens for all relationships. So we get in our own lanes, our own comfort zone of how we're relating, how we're doing things. And as I say, we may say that we want this, but we don't actually get out of that lane. And the more we get solidly into the lane of what it is we actually don't want, but it's comfortable, it takes a greater and greater effort to move out of it. But it's very possible now that we know what we know about neuroscience and neuroplasticity, that the brain never loses its ability to make new wiring for the thing that we really want. So that's the really exciting news. But it's not always easy, it's not. And as soon as we attempt something and it doesn't work, I hear people around taking golf lessons. They say, "Oh, that person, that coach, really messed up my game." And think, well, that's the whole point. That's the point. They're supposed to mess up your game and give you new skills. We have to be willing to do that. And on the personal level, we have to be willing to do something that makes us uncomfortable. And usually we've gotten into that area of discomfort because of some belief we're carrying around. And so we tend to deflect. When we're uncomfortable, we deflect and we make it the other person's fault, So if we think about, in this business, really common one, is employees. It's hard to get, this is true, it's hard to get good help. It's very labor intensive. It's a tough business, for help. And it's really easy to get upset with your employees. And that being upset, that's being in reaction mode. We wish that they had done something differently. We're disappointed. And so we can overreact in that moment and not just take a breath, pause, and make a decision. This is the big piece right here, guys. You have to make a decision, whether it's an employee, it's a husband, it's a child, nothing like a child to trigger your old emotions, But when we can pause and make a decision for the way that we want to show up and have the difficult conversation or have the request or whatever it is, then we're making change. Now we're rewiring when we pause and do it a little differently. So when the student's saying it's rattling off, they may not even have the words of I can't do it, but they're holding themselves back like they can't do it, right? There's something telling them in the background, no, they can't. And it's uncomfortable, and they've lived there in that place all the time doing this old habit for the longest time. And now here's Anne to show them, I used to, Anne does it on a big level, show them a new way of doing it. And they have to be willing. We all have to be willing to be uncomfortable with change. It's a very, very thing that we resist. And as Anne talked about the negativity, we are, as I mentioned in one of the other webinars, we are wired for the negative. That was for us, keeping us safe. So our brains, gravitate towards the no, the negative, much more rapidly. And when we talk about this, the amygdala, our back brain, our hind brain, often called our reptilian brain, that's the, flight brain that has us running, right? Or freezing. It also is the one that makes associations with a present situation based on our past. It brings that to the forefront. And that survival-based brain works faster than our prefrontal cortex, which is our newer brain, which is the one of thought and reasoning. So we have to pause, or we're going to end up in something that we wish we hadn't. And as we get into, allow ourselves, because it happens, it can be, we call it the amygdala hijack. You know, it can take over without us knowing. It's like lightning speed, and suddenly we're in reaction mode. And now we're flooded with adrenaline and cortisol and all the nasty, not feel good hormones. And they can linger in our system for 30 hours. They can stay there for a really, really long time. So in that moment, if we can build in that beautiful pause and say, how do I want to be? Who do I want to show up as? In this next conversation I'm going to have, how do I want to be with my horse? You know, if I'm upset, if I come, you know, flying in the barn to have my lesson and I've had a bad moment on the way, or I've been caught in traffic, can I pause in the barn before I approach my horse? You know, there's so many different opportunities to do it differently, but it takes an interrupt, doesn't it, Anne? You have to consciously, intentionally interrupt.
Definitely, consciously is the main word for sure, to really interrupt. And even with the students, sometimes, you know, really, you know, letting them stop and think about it, what we've done, to see the change for sure, not to, even with them, to, you know, you've done lessons, you've trained and things, but all of a sudden they're doing their old habits, and just what you're saying, to be more conscious about it. Yeah, it's fascinating to watch for sure. And that, yeah.
No, go ahead. You're good. Keep going. It's good.
Yeah, no, and that conversation with the horse, you know, being, you know, that partnership, that relationship with your horse, also absolutely so important to, and even as your horse gets better or has worked through something, or it's a young horse that you're bringing along, you know, so important to, you know, again, keep your focus on what it is you're trying to do. I've had some actually recently riding some young horses, some riders, and getting some good riders. But I was saying the other day about, you know, going to the jumps, and they're on a 5 or 6 year old, and being busy and telling the horse isn't straight, and, you know, you're crooked, and why, come on, you got to be straight. And you know, she's not saying that out loud, but she's coming to jumps, it's kind of left and right and busy, and the horse's mouth is open, his head is up, and she's doing, and from my perspective, it was, you know, she's just doing too much. Just let the horse gallop to the jump and count and find a distance and whatever. And so I said to her, so what's going on? And she said, well, you know, he's just crooked. He's just not straight going to the jump. And I said, you know, you're telling him all these things about how bad and how wrong, and that he's not going straight. And yet he's just a young horse, and he just needs to jump the jump, to just get from one side to the other. And when you just get up in the half seat and let him gallop to the jump, and not tell him all this sort of like trying to do dressage or something on the way to the jump when he's really a young horse. When she changed her attitude of just go to the middle of the jump and let the horse go to the jump, and not having this conversation with him, especially, and he's a young horse, he didn't know it yet. Anyway, she was saying, oh, you know, his flat work, just give me a few weeks with his flat work and he'll be much better. She told me that at the beginning of the lesson. Well, she's kind of doing it in front of the jump, and the horse is knocking the jumps down and jumping funny, and you're just doing too much. And again, whether the voice is in her head or she's gonna fix him, all of that. When she just let him do his thing, kind of, you know, a little looser, and just now, right now, we're just going to the jump without all this other talk going on. I don't know, but it reminds me of what you're talking about. Oh my God, the horse jumped way better. His style was better. He wasn't crooked because they were just going to the jump, and she. It was interesting because of all these sort of voices. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but
total sense, and it just reminds me so much of many of your lessons, where it just, so much of them is spent on allowing the horse to go forward, and whether you tie the knot in the reins and get people to really, they think they're doing it, but they're not doing it, you know, and that the not doing it is hanging on to the known ways, you know, and it's tough to get past that, and you're a master at getting somebody past that, and to watch the remarkable difference in the horses when they go forward, when we're finally letting them go forward, because you're forcing them to, you know, they have to, she ties the knot in the reins, they have to give, they can't be all restrictive and bending right, left, and doing all the busy things that the brain up here is taking over. And it becomes, doesn't it, then the goal is one thing. So the brain and the horse's, we're talking about two brains here, is our brain and the horse's brain, right? We're asking them to think about too many things at once. And we're getting it all confused, and we're forgetting the main focus, like you say, is to jump the jump. right?
Yeah.
And we can perfect all those little pieces afterwards, but we get cluttered up here with all the ways things, the magic should, he should be bending, he should be straighter, he should be all these things, right?
Yeah. And in the same time, it's a kind of this critical voice. And I know the writer doesn't mean it. I know it's not that. Again, it's like teaching people, and not saying, oh, that's so bad, or that looks so bad, or the negative stuff. Stop pulling him to the right. Your right hand is so rough. Stop going to the right. Go to the left, or changing that also, that it's more positive. But another thing in teaching, and the relationship piece, I think, is from being a coach as well. Going over, say, a course afterwards, or your student talking to your students also. I mean, like with the little girl, I was very, I think I'm always positive. I'm clear, I'm strong, and I'm, some might say I'm tough, but I'm just honest in a lot of what I say, but I'm clear. But I think I reward, just like the horses, you reward them. Also, when people show, and they come out, and oh my goodness, sometimes the trainers just rip them up one side and down the other, and how bad or stupid or awful it was. And most human beings, I think most riders, we beat ourselves up enough. Most of the time you don't need your coach doing that on top of it. I've really learned through the years of, again, point out the positive stuff and not dwell on the negative. Same thing with the horses, always looking for a chance to give, a chance to reward, a safe place. Buck Brannaman, wonderful Western trainer, and it's all about the horse feeling safe and releasing the pressure and the reward of it. Yes, you correct them, but then the reward and looking for a safe place to go, or a fair place to go. All of that also, I think, because we tend to, like you say, it's negative as a rule. Right. Our first reaction is sort of negative.
Absolutely. And it's all emotionally based. And as we know, emotion doesn't belong in training. We lose our tempers or whatever, people, and it's often, or I'm going to say not often, it's always about us. The horse is just trying to understand us, right? And especially when you see at horse shows and the trainer's embarrassed, he thinks it's, or she thinks it's about them. It's nothing to do with them, right? It's all about the student didn't get it, or the horse doesn't get it, or whatever, but it gets transferred over to that. And suddenly we're blasting the student, who's probably already a little distraught over the performance as it was. But as you say, we are our own worst critic. We get in the way our own way more than anybody else. And it's up to us to change that, to build in that pause and ask ourselves how we want to be, in that moment, so we're not reactionary. So, I took students to task at horse shows just the opposite, when I thought they were too tough on their horses. Emotion came out, and there were a couple of kids that actually got sent back to the barn. I said, "You're done." Yeah. Because if they got, angry inappropriately at their horse, I said, "Okay, we're done. We're going to have another conversation, but we're not going to continue right now. We're going to interrupt this. This is not fair to the horse." But that's emotion getting in the way. And when we're in reactionary mode, doesn't matter what the conversation is, what the situation is, that's this back brain running to the forefront. And if there's some story that we're telling ourselves, we don't, we may not have it spelled out like that. Oh, that's because I'm embarrassed, or that's because I don't feel good about myself. We're not running that. We're just reacting. And somebody very run to that, whether it's a horse or a spouse or a child or a coworker or whatever. So it really is making a decision, isn't it, to do it differently, to take a breath and say, how can I do this differently? And then when we do that, all kinds of ideas show up, because we've built in some pause, and we haven't allowed all those neurochemicals to take over. That's the amygdala hijack. That's just, our brains are being hijacked at that moment. We're over something that's probably not the truth, like whatever we're telling ourselves, if we're embarrassed, whatever we're telling ourselves. And on the plus side, it's Anne talking about learning how to take in the good, right? Take in the praise that you've been kind of conditioned not to. We say this, funny old statement that women used to say to each other. They say, "Oh, I love that dress." And the answer would be, "Oh, this old thing." They couldn't just say, "Oh, thank you, I love it too." Right? Because we're conditioned to the negative, and we really can condition ourselves to the positive, but it takes a little bit of work and effort.
Absolutely. No, it's so great to hear and to talk about it, because most people don't do it like that, but to take the time and really say, how can I do it differently? And it affects everything. It affects your riding. It affects the rest of your day. It affects the way you interact with other people, of course. when you lose, don't lose the lesson, all of those things, but, and also in the right size, of course you're always learning. That's always, you're always learning, but, and more, okay, great. I'm going to learn from that, whatever happened in the ring, or also our relationships, again, being able to take the time and or even to say, I'm sorry, I didn't handle that well. I thought about it. You can certainly go back and even apologize for it, or
Sure.
make good on something.
Yeah.
But then changing it, as you say, in the moment. Same thing with the horses, that being patient with them, asking them and seeing if they get what you're talking about, that patient part of it, or with the horses. So often I say, put yourself in the horse's shoes. What is your horse getting out of it? And even that sort of making them think a little differently, think using their brain differently. What is my horse really, same thing. It's emotional. They're not doing the leg yield or whatever. And the kid's kicking them and pulling them and telling them 3 different things, and none of it's right. Mixed signals. But it's like, now stop for a minute, just walk. Now, what is he really getting? And that's a little bit taking that pause kind of thing.
Yes.
That, and sometimes also with them, well, what would you say to your friend, in this situation, with their own situation, whether the horse or their own, that they just had not a great round or something happened, what would you say to your friend as they're beating them, they're beating themselves up a bit, that kind of, a couple of those things I use sometimes.
Right. That's awesome. It's really looking at what's the real thing. So if someone has a bad round, say, and they have all kinds of, self-talk that's going on, but the reality is the truth. I'm always going to the truth. The truth is that they're disappointed, and that's okay. I mean, it's a truth. They had a round that they didn't like, that they would have chosen it differently, but this is what showed up. And then now's the time to learn from it. If we can get into this level of the truth and acceptance of what is, and acceptance doesn't mean approval. It doesn't mean that we liked the round, but I accept the fact that it went this way. And I accept the fact that I'm disappointed. I can be disappointed without taking that out on my spouse or dog. I can just say, oh, I'm disappointed. I wish this had gone this way. And so now I can make that, there's that pause. I can make that decision. Yes. To move in the direction. It's a choice now, instead of being in reactive mode. Then we flood ourselves with all kinds of feel-good hormones, just the opposite of the adrenaline and cortisol. We can feel it, just flood ourselves with good ones, because now we're taking action. We're taking positive action to, learn, as you say, don't lose the lesson, right?
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
And we see it in this world all the time, every single day, every single horse show. I was out, I'm golfing again. I was out golfing, with some friends, and this woman hit a couple bad shots, and she said, I'm having a bad day. And I stopped her and I said, no, you've had 2 golf swings that you don't like. You're not having a bad day. Right?
Exactly.
But she made and probably if we had a coaching session, I would have gotten to that she was actually embarrassed by the fact that she made 2 lousy swings,
Mm-hmm.
And so it turned into the whole day. And the
Yes.
truth was, she had 2 swings that she didn't like. And that's it. There was nothing more to it than that. But we attach a meaning to it based on these old beliefs, and we circle that around and around in our brains unknowingly. And then we get reaction, and then we make declarations like it's a bad day.
Yes. Yeah. Fascinating. Because it happens, as you say, all the time. We do see it all the time.
All the time. So when we can practice this, and we sort of interject a little bit in some of the other ones, the idea of meditation, practicing mindfulness, which I'm a big fan of, and mindfulness to me really is being in the moment, accepting, not necessarily proving, accepting what is, making decisions around that, just noticing. When we can practice that during non-stressful events, like this is part of our daily practice, it's as important as going to the gym. We start to exercise a different part of our brain. So we're not in reaction mode. It's the same, as I say, as going to the gym. If we can do that on a regular basis, then it can kind of come naturally to us. We feel that we're nervous or we're disappointed or whatever it is, and whatever the situation is.
Yeah, no, I think that's wonderful. And that you make everything the right size also. As you say, it's 2 bad golf swings, or the kid chipped at a jump, and whether you're the coach and, okay, she chipped. Yeah, we've had 1,000 lessons, whatever. Oh, well, she chipped. It's okay. Or the kid, I chipped. So it's the right size, that same thing as well. It's not the end of the day or the end of the world, or that so many people and I think even this kind of stuff I think also is so great for parents to work with somebody like you also to really get what's going on with their student, with those kids, with the I think that's so important. And as a teacher also to be able to share some of this with the parents so they understand it also. Some, the soccer moms kind of, and the pressure and all the things that's going on behind the scenes, those voices as well. How to also be able to have those kind of conversations with the parents, like having the conversation with the horse or the conversation with the rider. I mean, that's it really is the fun of it when you can get a little deeper with them, like we're talking about now, to see the changes. It's really so exciting to really see big changes. It's really exciting.
Right. It's fun. My mentor, David Bear, says often, that if it doesn't feel good, it's because we have this whole conversation going on about ourselves. If it doesn't feel good, it's probably not true. So the person who didn't have a good round is suddenly making herself the worst rider. She'll never get it. She'll never advance levels. She'll never reach her dreams. Or he coaches a lot of people in business, and if something's not going well, they don't have the client base that they would like to have, or they've lost a client or whatever. He says suddenly we're living under a bridge. It's just not true. Today we have a roof over our heads. We have food in front of us. But we take it all the way, to the negative, and that piece we can dial it back and just say, what really is the truth going on right here?
Absolutely.
Just nervous or whatever. We can acknowledge those places, then we can move from there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And even in our sport, it's very good. Very often, even myself, I've done it through the years. I mean, I've done it both ways, but seeing other top riders, hunter jumpers, whatever it is, they have a bad day sometimes. They fall off or don't qualify. God forbid for the Olympics, somebody occasionally, but have a bad day, and how they handle it, and life goes on, and they're professionals, but it's interesting to see other people that like you say, you think it's the end of the world. Like I said in one of the earlier webinars about falling off at the World Cup finals in the early 80s, and oh my God, on Libya's. And I thought I would never ride again. I was embarrassed and had to walk out of the ring and the whole thing. Well, I went on to win the Grand Prix of Rome and then off to 5 Olympics years later. And, but then I thought I was so embarrassed and humiliated and everything. I would never ride again and never have another owner or horse or all of those things you're saying, life has been great. That wasn't the end of it.
Yeah, the embarrassment, the shame, all those things, just come up like dread, and make us feel horrible about ourselves. And if we can just really look at what's actually going on, maybe you're a little bit over your head at that moment, you're just learning, whatever, but we declare a meaning about that, which is probably not true. You were just on your way learning. It was part of, and as you say, everybody falls off, everybody misses the distance, everybody forgets to count, whatever it is, goes off course, whatever, it happens at all levels. And I think the more we can get that into the students, or for me, clients, that this is human nature. This is part of it. And we don't, we're not broken.
No.
We just have to work with what we have and see what's driving the show, at that moment, and unpack it a little bit, and then we can move forward from there. The choice again, the decisions, the intentions around that. It takes a whole load off, and we can get to the truth. We get past all the muck, the clatter, sitting there in our brains all the time. There's really a nicer place to be in any given situation, and that is always going to improve our relationships. And again, with ourselves, with our horse, with the people around us. So it's really fun.
Yeah, and as they get it more, and they get some of the self-doubt and talk out of their heads, and as I say, make it the right size. Okay, so you chipped or you knocked the jump down or whatever. As you can really work on that and change the dynamic or the voice in your head, you'll get more success and you get more better rounds, and in time that goes away a lot, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. When they can get them concentrate on one thing, like when you talked about your student recently, your virtual student you're having fun with, it was one thing, get from point A to point B and jump the jump, and as she did, the horse got better and better. It's like we fill our brains with all kinds of clutter, and we don't get the big picture of what it is we're trying to do. So the simpler we can make it, the easier we can see it, the easier we can act, and we get rid of all that negative stuff that's dragging us down and preventing us from going where it is we want to go.
Absolutely. And horses are such a reflection of that, because as you say, when they're that rider or these other ones, they have all this talk going on in their head, too much left and right, or doubt, or it'll never happen, or the young girl that checks out sometimes. The horse is sweet, they'll put up with it to a point, but they're left and right, or knocking the jump down, or chipping, because what the rider, all these voices in the rider's head, the horse is getting, and then when the rider can get clear and free of that and trust the horse, or focus on, as you say, one thing, or focus on the line and get rid of all those voices, oh my God, the same horse can go perfectly. I mean, that's what's so fun about the horses, they're so cute that way.
Yes.
When sometimes it's like they have 10 people riding them at one time, 3 or 4 or 10 people.
Yeah, for sure. Years and years ago, I'm not going to attach a year to it because I don't remember which one it was, but you were doing a clinic in Southern Pines that I was taking horse down to Florida, and I stayed over and I rode in that clinic. I was riding with you at home as well, but and then rode in that clinic at the lower level, and at the top level, you had top eventers there. So you had Mike Plum, 7-time Olympic rider, just amazing. And you got him to ride his, I think it was Karen's horse, the gray horse, and ride to a very large combination with, my glasses down, with his arms out to the side, with the reins on the neck, and all of a sudden the horse just did it beautifully. Everything that he had been telling the horse prior was getting in the way of what the horse wanted to do, and his voice was getting in the way. I remember it was, and I love the fact that he put himself in front of you to say, help me here, which is really nice. He attended the clinic and he rode in it and he did the exercises, and how much different when you made it simple like that for the horse and got him out of the way, how beautifully the horse jumped through. As I say, it was a very large combination. And the horse did it beautifully, if you remember that. So stuck in my head for a really long time.
Yeah, really fun to see how all that can work out. It's just, it's amazing stuff.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. So I think we could kind of wrap up. I'm going to look at my notes here. Pretty darn good. I jotted down some quotes that I like. I love quotes, and I appreciate some ones that Anna sent to me, ones that I've come up with. But the one recently was it just kind of affirmed what we're talking about is Dr. Erickson. Actually, it was an obituary I think he must have sent me, that a famous psychologist from Florida State University, and he pointed out, it was great, I'm going to read it. He says that the practice in what we're trying to achieve, he's talking about athletes here, or it could be music or anything, could not be mindless repetition, because we're going to repeat the same thing again, is what he's saying. He called for deliberate practice, preferably guided by a coach or expert teacher, helping that person to identify and correcting weaknesses and monitoring progress, because we're going to get pulled off. We're going to go back to our habituated ways without knowing it. It's kind of more than sneaky. Our old habits come up and grab us really quickly. So, I love that, just that affirmation of something we're trying to change and do. If we get help and we have somebody monitoring our progress, I mean, I can't imagine, trying to hit a golf ball without some help, because I don't know what I'm doing, and I need guidance, and I recognize that I will always need guidance, no matter what level I get to. That's part of the game. And then he says, sometimes, the hard work is generally not fun when you're trying to make these changes. It's awkward. That's my words. I use that a lot. And he says, if your mind is wandering or you're relaxed, you probably won't improve, because you're not making that change. You're not staying with it, even though it's hard. And then to segue over to Dr. Joe Dispenza, who I love, and I think we recommended his book in one of our earlier webinars. Let me find it. Yeah, he says, when you understand the why and the what, the how becomes apparent. And so the things that we're trying to change and do, we get stopped up because we don't know how. And as I say, of course we don't know how, because we've never done it. But when we stay really, really focused on what we want and why we want it, the how will show up. But unfortunately, it goes the other way. People get stuck on the how. That's your job. They've got to stay with the big picture, and go for it in that way. And, that's I back it up again with Wayne Dyer, who I love. It says, I'll see it when I believe it.
Yes.
You have to believe it, even though you haven't done it before. You have to believe that this is going to happen, this change is going to happen, this, whatever it is, whatever it's a goal in our relationships with ourselves, with a horse, all of it, that if we can paint that picture for ourselves and then just believe it, even when you can't see it yet, if you continue on that, you will get it, you know.
Yeah.
Otherwise you'll be the girl that can't get the exercise because she thinks she's slow, right?
Right.
She's convinced herself of that. So I think we're pretty good. If there's anything else you want to add, Anne, you could just take a little breath and wrap up and turn it over to Kelly. Just sort of looking at my notes here. Anything else, and we could turn it over to Kelly if there's any questions that have come up.
Yeah, I think we could turn over to Kelly, see if there's Kelly.
Hello? Can you hear me?
We can.
Great. Okay, so I have a great question. Can you please discuss the difference between complacency and not blowing things out of proportion? Sometimes I feel that if I just let it go as just a chip, that takes away the drive to do better next time and learn to fix it.
So the blowing it out of proportion, I imagine, is where making it be something that is not. It's just a chip, right? It's just a, we had a snug one, you know, in our hunt around or jump around. That it's really to, I think, to ask the question in that moment is, what's the meaning we're giving that? You know, we're not going to blow it out of proportion because we had the chip. We want to try and do the right exercises so we do see the jumps better, so we can develop what we need to develop to make ourselves more consistent. But in the meantime, disappointment's not a bad thing. You know, you can be disappointed that you had a snug one which you didn't want to, you know, or maybe it's a horrible chip, you know, and you didn't want to. Those things happen, right? And the idea of blowing it off is almost like pretending it didn't happen, like it's no big deal. No, it should be a big deal. You know, you want to try and dial this back so you don't have as many. You want to do the exercises that Anne has, a lot of people do, you know, whatever you need to do, you know, work with your coach and to get a better eye, to get a better sense of rhythm and pace. The blowing it, it's not, I don't think you're blowing out of proportion. You call it what it is. You know, it's just, here's the meaning we can attach to it, or we can just call it what it is. You know, I had a chip. Did I like it? No. Yeah. Then you can say, what am I going to do about it?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think as you say, not get it too emotional one way or the other. Just what you're saying, be honest about, okay, it's a chip. What can I do about it? I need to practice more, or I need to count more, or I need to ride more. I haven't been riding, whatever, enough. Again, what are you going to do about it? Not to, and that's to me, that's an inside job. I mean, it's with your coach and everything too. It's not blowing. It's not saying, no, it didn't happen, or, you know, that it's black or white, you know, it didn't happen, or it's just so awful, I'm never going to ride again. That's, don't you think that's the rider has to sort of figure that out also, though? How would you?
They have to, if they're blowing it out of proportion, that's because they're giving it a meaning that's probably not true. Like you say, it's probably not true that you'll never get it. You know, it's probably not true that, you know, the next 10 horse shows is going to show up every single time. You know, it's probably not true that you should just stop riding. You know, whatever your version of blowing it out of proportion is, you know, is when we can just look at it for what it is. And then back to that word acceptance, you know, yeah, chips happen. And probably had a few, right? You know, that's bringing it right back to what is it, and keeping the emotion out of it. You can be disappointed. That's okay. You're allowed to be disappointed. And then what are you going to do constructively about it next to be better?
Great. And then we have another question from the chat that says, I've always thought that having a good relationship with myself is really important to keep going with my life. But I still having this doubt about why our relationship with the horses is not the best until the relationship with ourselves is the best. And she wrote that very early on in the webinar. So I heard a lot of things that have probably answered her question, but I thought I should read it.
Yeah, for sure. You know, I think we probably have answered it, but, you know, and you can take this too, just that, if we're allowing emotion to get into our relationship with our horse, that's about us. And so that's why we do have to figure that out, you know, whether you figure it out by, you know, reading a lot of books or preferably working with a coach to see why you're attaching a meaning to something there that's bringing up that emotion, that that you're not handling well. So yes, I think we probably have, but this is just a really, really key point, is to see what is it that is bringing up that negative emotion towards our horse, that's preventing us from having just the most remarkable relationship that's possible out there, as you and your horse.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. Can you read it once again, Cindy? Kelly? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. She wrote, I've always thought that having a good relationship with myself is really important to keep going with my life, but I still having this doubt about why our relationship with the horses is not the best until the relationship with ourselves is the best.
Oh, interesting. Because I would have said, thank God for the horses. My relationship with the horses was better than my relationship with myself initially, actually. Cindy, what do you think about that? I like I say, horses for me, they taught me so much actually about to have a better relationship with myself. So I would sort of do it reverse. And yet, yeah, just what you're saying, to look at herself, why she feels that way about her horses. In a funny way, I would see it differently, the actually working on the relationship with my horses helped my relationship with myself.
Yeah, and I think you touched on it, and I just jump in to, applaud you, because you put yourself in the place over many, many years of allowing yourself to learn from your horse, to look at your horse as a teacher. And Kelly, that when you read it again, it jumped out at me, the word best. And I want to make sure that whoever sent that in gets that it's always a process. We're always a work in process. And there isn't we have to get to a certain level in order to. We're always working on it all the time. It's fluid, so I'm hoping that the writer of that comment or that question isn't thinking she has to get or he has to get to a certain level just in order to. It's ongoing. It's ongoing all the time. It's like if you have kids, your kids are going to push your buttons, right? Another relationship is going to trigger old stuff that's going to come out, and your horse might trigger you. But the more you know about yourself, the more you can make a decision to do it differently. So.
Great. That's all I have for questions.
Awesome. So I think we could going to close this out. So
Yeah.
I'll let you take it away, Anne.
Yeah, thank you all for joining us. We have had such fun bringing this Mind Matter series to you, and I'm thankful for Cindy. We got together to get to do this together, because I've learned so much. The affirmations and doing it, and then all of this work with you has been fabulous and made me rethink a lot of things also. And it's been a wonderful experience for me as well. And anyway, we're looking forward to hearing from everyone, and we'd love to get your feedback and your experiences, how you're applying these principles to your riding, your competitions, and your life. And as I say, it's been wonderful for me to stir things as well, and different ideas from the past, and talk about them a little more out loud. And yeah, it's been really, really fabulous. So Cindy, thank you so much for your time and your focus and your sharing all of this with us. It's been amazing.
Well, right back at you, my friend. Providing this platform has been really exciting for me to dive back into the horse world, from in a different angle, in a really exciting way. It's been growing for me too. Personally, it makes me stop and think a little bit more about how this would affect somebody and how they're going to take this out into the world for themselves, in this realm. And so it's been really, really fun to do this over 5 webinars. We are. It's really awesome. So, Anne, why don't you go ahead and tell people how they can?
Yeah. So I have my Riding and Jumping Mentor membership site that you can find, AnneKursinski.com. I also do in-person training here at my farm and at some horse shows. So you can find me again online. I'm also doing some training virtually, people sending in some videos, which has been really lots of fun during this COVID time, really interesting, and people from all over the country, all over the world actually. And then also some live video teaching, which can be like a clinic or a group lesson, or private. I've had this one great gal that's learned so much. She said it's been 14 weeks we've been doing it ever since this started. And to see her progress has been amazing. Really a lot of fun. It's live on the video. So it's been pretty cool. Then also, I have my book being republished, and that should be out now in stores. You can order it actually on Amazon. Ann Kursinski's Riding and Jumping Clinic, with color photos and a whole new Hunter Derby chapter. And this weekend, actually here at Market Street in New Jersey, I'm teaching a clinic. So we still have a few spots open, Saturday and Sunday, and that you can look up online as well. But so a clinic here at Market Street. So that's what I'm doing. And Cindy, you can share how they can reach you, because I think a lot of these people could really benefit from more work with you. And I know my group will as well.
Thank you, Anne. So just to reiterate again, I did this last time and I just can't say enough to people. If you have the opportunity to work with Anne, please take advantage. You can do it from across the country, across the world. You can send her videos, you can work with her virtually. Now is the opportunity, especially with what's going on in the world. We have more and more opportunity to do that. So I'm excited for you, Anne, to have a whole new platform to bring this out to people. And you will find your riding exponentially go up, and your horse will thank you for it. You can reach me. It's showing there on the slide how to get a hold of me. And we have our signature Mind Matters programs, which are, we do VIP one-on-one coaching, we have group programs, and now we are just launching our membership site, our Mind Matters membership site, where we can continue this as a community. And I'll be dropping videos and inspirations and trainings. And for our membership site, I'll be getting on a live call once a month. And people will also, as members, be able to join a private Facebook page where we are building our community to support each other and keep this going, keeping the positivity going and keeping the intention going around our mindsets. And we're going to be offering a special, join up with Anne here, a buy-up from her membership site. If you are a member of Ann Kursinski Riding and Jumping Mentor, you can join the Mind Matters membership site for just $7 as an add-on. So it's really, really low intro offer if you're a member. So highly encourage you to do both. And I guess we'll be sending out emails to that effect. So you'll get the contact info for that and how to do that. Kelly, we're going to work out the tech side on that to get that out there so people know. And you can reach out to us individually, both of us, with your questions. Please, as you go through this afterwards, as you leave here, we really encourage you to check back in again. You can do it right on the posts of the Facebook Live, or emailing us, because we love the questions. It makes us think, it makes us better trainers and coaches too. So we really are really excited and happy to have everyone's participation. It's been really, really fun. And keep it going. Keep it going.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, it's been an amazing journey, and sad kind of it's over, but we'll be doing more things together. And I'm so excited to have you be part of my Riding and Jumping Mentor program. I just think that's so exciting for everybody.
Yeah. It's really
yeah, I've always thought the mental game was so important. Like I said, since the 70s, worked on that, and before it was really out there and cool and things.
Yeah.
So. Great to have you on.
You did it long time ago. You were my inspiration for going down that path, believe it or not. So here we are, many years later. This is what we're doing. So it's really fun. So I thank you for that. And I thank everybody for being with us today. Thank you, Kelly, for facilitating. It's been awesome. And with that, stay in touch.
Yeah, thank you, everybody, for being here. And hope to hear from all of you, one way or another.
Absolutely.
Take care.
Bye.